All right, guys, so we got to talk about hardcore politics once again and give you guys an update on the midterms. And the update on the midterms has more to do with leadership than it actually does with the results of the election, as we already know that the Senate has been won by the Democrats. It's just about if they're going to have 50 or 51 seats. That will come down to the Herschel Walker, Raphael Warnock Senate race out in Georgia. But it is projected that the GOP will win the House. And NBC went ahead and made this projection this morning. And I want to go ahead and roll this clip. Take a look.
And Garrett, thank you.
Let's drill down on some of these results. What's next for both parties? NBC's senior Washington correspondent Hallie Jackson with us this morning. So, Hallie, control of the Senate no longer at issue. Democrats hold on. What does that do for the Georgia race if it's not hinging on Senate control?
It's a real question of turnout, right? Are people, are Georgians still going to show up and vote if, in fact, it means, unlike what we saw in 2020, 2021, that control of the Senate is not at stake? Now, listen, both parties are still incentivized. Democrats would love 51 seats just to give some wiggle room. Republicans would love to keep Democrats down at 50 there. You're still seeing a lot of attention, a lot of national backing for each of these candidates in this race. But again, will people feel motivated to yet again get out there and cast their ballots?
Let's talk about the House. It is undecided this morning. We are projecting a Republican-controlled House. But if it is such a narrow margin, how does that affect the Republican agenda? How does that affect would-be Speaker McCarthy's job?
Okay, so any Republican majority means you are probably going to see a lot of investigations into President Biden and the White House on everything from COVID to Afghanistan. But that very, very slim majority means that the actual work of governing is just going to be trickier. It's just going to be messier, right? Because it means that with fewer, with less wiggle room, basically, a smaller group of members could have more power to say, well, wait a second, I have this demand or that demand, and kind of hold hostage some of these various bills. That's going to be the big challenge for House Speaker, if he is House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. And as Garrett has explained, Savannah, that's still an open question.
Well, can we talk a little bit more about this? Because the conventional wisdom is that it would be the far right members who would hold more sway if there's this narrow margin. Why is that? Why would that particular aspect of the Republican conference have more power than, say, the moderate wing of the party?
So there's sort of two answers here. One is because the House Freedom Caucus, which is the sort of far-right, ultra-conservative wing of the Republican conference in the House, is well organized. They understand how to flex their muscle. They've done it before. They've tried to do that before. That said, with such a tiny majority, if it is, let's say 3-4 seats, you could see a coalition of moderate members, Savannah, come together and have the same kind of sway, right? It makes every Republican member of Congress, every Democratic member too, pretty important if, in fact, the margin is just, let's say, 3, 4, 5.
And yeah, so as you guys heard that, okay, NBC is projecting that the GOP will win the House. Now, again, nothing's guaranteed, but this is the current projection, okay? I would say that's probably pretty safe. They don't make those projections unless they know for sure most of the time. But the interesting thing about this midterm election, specifically when it comes to the House, is that Republicans won the popular vote, okay? They won the popular vote. And it's funny because the left is not talking about it. Because, when Trump lost the popular vote, basically every Republican has lost the popular vote in the last 20, 30 years or something like that. They always tell you, well, this is a sign that the country wants to go left and that our institutions are not democratic because the Senate is not representative of the popular vote. Well, again, I got questions because it seems to me like this House race right here is not representative of the country, considering how the GOP is more popular by about 4 or 5 or so million votes, right? Again, what happened to all that? Seems to me like the country is clearly moving right if we're talking about the popular vote here, okay? Well, this is what happens when the Democrats engage in voter suppression, right? And what we're talking about here is gerrymandering. The thing that Democrats always say that Republicans engage in as a way of voter suppression to keep black people from voting. Well, it looks like to me that this election cycle, the Democrats managed to gerrymander their way to subverting democracy because clearly the GOP is more representative of this country than the Democrats. However, the GOP barely is going to win the House. You don't see Democrats complaining about this. Again, I wonder why not. Right? I wonder why not. But with that being said, this conversation has more to do with leadership, okay? As that has been called into question, specifically in the House and the Senate. We'll talk about the Senate here in a minute, but in the House, there's a revolt against leader Kevin McCarthy because of the poor performance from the GOP. And you have some members of Congress, like, for example, Matt Gaetz in the Freedom Caucus, throwing out a list of potential nominees or competitors to take down Kevin McCarthy. One name included was even Tulsi Gabbard. Take a look.
Now, on the outside, there are also some creative choices. I've heard people talk about Jim DeMint as sort of a thought leader in the conservative movement, respected by a lot of people, been out of, the exact jousting of the legislative game for a while. I've heard the name Tulsi Gabbard, someone who might actually bring us a few folks from the left who are tired of the corrupt ruling class in this town. Some folks have even thought about dusting off Newt Gingrich and bringing him back as kind of a wise old gray hair. And then if an issue that we need to focus on is central to bringing Republicans together at the border, how about Chad Wolf? Chad Wolf served in the Trump administration, did great things as the Homeland Security Secretary, still doing a lot of great policy work at the America First Policy Institute. And so those are just some ideas, but we have to go through the stages of grief here a little bit, Charlie. Right now, there are a lot of the establishment Republicans in denial, believing that Kevin McCarthy can somehow still become Speaker. What I'm here to tell you is there are definitely at least 5 people, actually a lot more than that, who would rather be waterboarded by Liz Cheney than vote for Kevin McCarthy for Speaker of the House.
Yeah, so those are some strong words towards Kevin McCarthy, who I definitely agree should be removed from leadership. There's absolutely nothing inspiring about Kevin McCarthy whatsoever. He absolutely failed to articulate a clear direction that the Republican Party was going to take the country in if we were to get back the House before the midterms. I mean, who knows what was in the commitment to America, right? Nobody knows. Nobody cared. That's part of the problem. The guy's a poor marketer, okay? At least with Nancy Pelosi, I know the Democrats' agenda. I know what they want to do. I know the policies that they want to propose. I can tell you right now off the top of my head what they're probably going to try to do for the next 2 years. I can't really tell you what Republicans. Again, part of that is Kevin McCarthy's fault. Now, it's not just Kevin McCarthy getting backlash in the House for the leadership. You also have some backlash that is happening in Senate in regards to leadership as well, too, as you have a group of brave Republicans led by Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, some other guys, Marco Rubio, that are taking on Mitch McConnell. And I want to play this audio clip from Ted Cruz's podcast in which he gives us some insider information in regards to how Senate elections work and why he believes the GOP lost the Senate during the midterms. And I'm telling you guys, this is actually some very insightful but shocking information from Ted Cruz. Take a look.
I was waiting for a Republican leader to lay out a vision of here's how we're going to fight against Obama. Here's what we're going to do to press back against these disastrous policies. Ben, it will amaze you. At leadership elections, the leaders don't give speeches. They don't lay out agendas. They don't say what they intend to do. They say absolutely zero about their plans going forward. Instead, what happens is
which is shocking, by the way, because
yes.
If it's a leadership election, you would think, and this is the first time I'm learning about this, I thought for sure there was a, hey, here's why I still think I should be the leader, Mitch McConnell, right? This is what we're going to do. This is what how I'm going to do things. This is, and then would answer questions. You're saying that will not happen on Wednesday and does not happen in the past either.
So I can tell you in the past, it has never happened. And they don't give any speeches at all. Instead, other senators stand up and give nominating speeches. And the nominating speeches are these epic poems composed to the leaders. And so I've been there 10 years. I've never voted for or against Mitch McConnell. Why is that? No one's ever run against him. And every election has been a vote by acclamation. In other words, he's just been adopted by acclamation. We've never had to cast a vote. My first year I saw that, I was like, okay, this is really bizarre. But then 2 years later, 2014, I'd been in the Senate for 2 years. Something new developed, which is in 2014, for the first year, Mitch McConnell created a super PAC. And Mitch's super PAC raises and spends about $300 million every 2 years to elect Senate Republicans. I remember sitting there in 2014, 2 years into my term in the Senate, amazed and horrified. In fact, texting Mike Lee, the wonderful conservative from Utah and my closest friends, this is terrible, because today Mitch McConnell is the single largest donor to every single Republican senator, almost without exception. He doesn't give to my campaigns. He didn't give a penny to Mike Lee's campaign. 6 years ago, he didn't give a penny to Ron Johnson's campaign. But Mitch, for most of the Republicans in the Senate, Mitch is spending $10 million, $20 million, $30 million, as much as $40 million on their races. So most of the Republicans are scared to cross him. I do think this cycle it may be different. So I have publicly called for delaying the leadership elections from Wednesday till after the Georgia runoff, which is on December 6th. Several other Republican senators are called for the same. Mike Lee has called for the same. Ron Johnson has called for the same. Josh Hawley has called for the same. Cynthia Lummis has called for the same. Actually, Marco Rubio has called for the same, which surprised a lot of people. That was an unusual development. Just a few hours ago, Lindsey Graham called for delaying the elections. We're starting to see several Republicans lean out and call for that. That being said, the response of Republican leadership is not only no, but hell no. We will vote. Shut up and vote.
Is that because they're afraid you guys are going to organize, or
Yes.
and is it also they're afraid that as each day goes by, more and more Americans will sound off and talk to their elected officials about why they don't want Mitch McConnell to be the leader?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, so I was shocked, but also not shocked at the same time to hear Ted Cruz and his kind of insider information about how the Senate leadership elections work for the Republicans. Because what he just explained there, guys, is why Mitch McConnell is the kingmaker of the Republican Party. Like what a kingmaker is. A kingmaker is the guy that controls the legislative agenda and the money, mainly the money, because the money is what gets people elected, okay? Money and political clout, which is what Mitch McConnell has. A lot of these senators, they don't want to stand up to Mitch McConnell, and they go along with Mitch McConnell's agenda and what he wants because he is solely responsible for getting them elected. He is their main source of funding when it comes to the super PAC. So they never stand up to him. They never stand up to him. Because if they do, then it's the end of their political career. So again, the Republicans in the Senate are basically being run by, like a mob, right? Like a gang led by Mitch McConnell. And you have some gang members that are speaking out and trying to revolt. Because Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy, they bombed these midterms. They are responsible for the fact that we did not do as well as we should have done. There's a whole lot of conversation about, well, Trump's candidates, which I do agree. At the very least, two of them, Dr. Oz and Herschel Walker, clearly Trump could have picked better. He should have picked better. But when you look at the funding, the disparities in funding between some of these races, like the Blake McMaster's race, okay, or the race that happened out in New Hampshire, the disparity in funding between the Democrats and Republicans, how can you blame Trump when his picks weren't being helped by the establishment Republican Party? When Mitch McConnell decided, you know what, I would much rather not fund these races and lose the Senate so I can stay leader than defund them, potentially win, and then these people end up kicking me out of leadership. So this guy literally tanked the Senate for his own personal gain. And this, my friends, is the biggest reason why the Republican Party did not win like we should have during the midterms. Because they're not working together, right? Everybody's not working together. Trump's not working with the establishment. The establishment's not working with Trump. Trump got his own PAC. These people, the establishment, they got their own PACs. And there's not a effort from everybody to fight against the Democrats. We're too divided. And that ultimately is what the Democrats want. Now, again, naturally, there's going to be the division between Trump and Ron DeSantis. Okay? Because that showdown is probably going to happen. However, I will say, some of that is healthy. Some of that is needed. But at the end of the day, what has to happen is that we have to put our differences aside and all come together behind one nominee, regardless of who that nominee is. The problem is that the Republican Party is not doing that today. So when people want to talk about why do we win, why do we lose? Well, it seems to me that the main reason is because we're too divided. It's MAGA versus the establishment versus MAGA, and they're not working together. And that's the problem. And when you are divided, you're going to always lose to Democrats because progressives and Democrats don't agree with each other. Progressive and established Democrats do not agree with each other on a lot of issues. However, they put their differences aside and they come together and say, hey, we're going to go out here and beat the Republicans. Republicans aren't doing that now. Republicans are choosing to withhold funding from certain candidates if they're MAGA candidates and don't care if they lose in the general, even though the people selected those candidates, right? Regardless of how you feel, the people, the base, they selected their general election candidate. You should fund that candidate if they're in the Republican Party. It doesn't matter whether or not you agree with their positions or whether or not they want you to be leader. The people of that state elected that person, so he should get funding, right? All these candidates are equal and they deserve equal opportunity to win. But again, that's not what happened. Mitch decided to spend money based off who was going to kiss the ring, right? Who was going to kiss the ring? And that's what cost us. Again, I can't come to a conclusion about Trump candidates. I don't know. I definitely think Dr. Oz and Herschel Walker weren't great, but still, I don't know. Because a lot of these races didn't get the proper funding. So it's hard for me to judge. Was it the funding? Was it candidate quality? What was it? We don't know. Because Democrats and Republicans weren't on an even playing field. Because of Mitch McConnell. Because of the division within the party. The GOP civil war that's been going on for a long, long time that nobody wants to talk about. And because everybody ignored it, nobody talked about it, everybody's surprised that, oh, Mitch McConnell's not funding MAGA candidates, right? When that's something I've clearly been warning about for a long time, that Trump and McConnell would go at each other during the midterms. Trump's going to put up his own candidates. McConnell's going to put up his own candidates. They're in a competition to raise money because they're trying to beat each other. Which, again, that plays right into the Democrats' hands. Plays right into their hands. There's no way we can be expected to win going forward if this is how stuff is going. Because if there's going to be a referendum on Trump because he lost, right? This is what they say. Oh, we need a new leader because Trump lost. Okay, well, if McConnell loses and Kevin McCarthy underperforms, right? He's not doing his job well. Why don't we have a vote on that? We need to have a vote on leadership from the top down, right? But again, because a lot of these GOP senators are too chicken shit to stand up to Mitch McConnell, because they know that if they stand up to him, he's going to withdraw funding from their campaigns and they'll lose their political careers because they don't have the ability to actually do any grassroots fundraising. They don't say anything. They cower. And then we lose. And America suffers because of it. Again, my point is that regardless of what happens moving forward, and this is specifically with the Ron DeSantis Trump thing, whoever wins, wins. And we all have to get behind that candidate, or else, again, we're just going to give the country away to the radical progressive Democrat agenda, and it's just going to be over. We have to work together. The divisiveness doesn't help. It's actually the reason why we lost the midterms. It is the main reason. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.